Let's look at a strategy for modeling this part. So if I look at it from the front view, I see that this is primarily a rectangle from here to here, a rectangle from here to here, and an arc up here. So let's start to model this geometry. And so I'll go to a new part file, and I'm going to start a new sketch on the XY plane, and I'll draw a rectangle above the origin, and I'll do coincident this line to the origin. I'll then dimension from the origin over to this point a distance of 82, and I'll dimension from here to here a distance of 12. I'll then draw an angled line in here about like this, and then I'll hold the mouse button down and come around with an arc about like that, and then I'll come out here tangent to that arc. Now it's trying to put a horizontal on there, so I'm going to come up here and then I'll add my tangent in here. So I'll do tangent between here and here. The radius of this arc is 20, and then I want to put the dimension from the quadrant here over to this point. So I'm going to draw a line in here over to the quadrant. I'll change that line to construction, and while I'm at it, I'm going to change these two lines to construction as well, and then I will dimension the distance from here to this point, a distance of 132. I'll dimension the angle between here and here, and that dimension is 140. And I'll dimension the angle between here and here, and that dimension is 22. Alright, then I'm going to do a arc off of this end, and I want that arc to be tangent to this line, and I will draw a second arc here, and I want this arc to be at this point, and it's trying to select another point, so I'm going to go in through that command again, and then I want that arc to be tangent as well. Okay, these two arcs should be concentric, so I'll do concentric this arc to this arc. I'll dimension one of these arcs, and this one is 18. I'll then draw a rectangle over here, and again I'm going to change these two lines to construction, and I will then do coincident this point to this point, and I also want to make sure that this is tangent, and I'll make sure that it's tangent there. It tells me it's already tangent, I don't need it. Alright, then I will dimension the distance from, actually let's draw a circle here. So I'll draw a circle. I'm going to do it from here over to this point, and let's dimension the radius of this circle. So I'll click on this the circle, then I'll right click and I'll tell it dimension type radius, and I'm going to do that as 15. And I also want to make sure that this point is coincident with this line, and then I'll dimension the distance from the center of this arc over to this point, and that distance is 212. I'll then draw a line from the center of this arc up to the 12 o'clock position, and I'll make that a construction line, and I'm going to dimension then from the line here up into this point, and I'll do that as 102. Notice it all turns black, it's all fully constrained. I'll draw a circle at the center of this arc, and the diameter of that is 13, and I'll draw a circle at the center of this arc, and the diameter of this one is 12. Let's rearrange these dimensions a little bit to make it clear, and so I put that 13 put that up here. Alright, I'm going to trim off this line right here, so I'll do trim, and I'll trim off this piece, and I'll trim off that piece, and I don't really need this line right here, but I'm going to leave it in for a minute, but I might end up trimming that off. I'll just bring it over here to the center of this arc for now. Alright, I will then draw a line from the center of this circle down about like that. I'm going to make this line a construction line, and then I'm going to put a line up here about like this. And I want it actually perpendicular to that line. If I scrub that line, it'll automatically put the perpendicular on there, and then I'll do coincident the midpoint of this line onto the end of that line. I'll then dimension the distance from this line to the center of this circle, distance of 12, and I will then put in a line along here, and I want this line parallel to that line, so I'll scrub that line, and there's the parallel, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to do a line on here, and I'm going to do it parallel to that line. Now I put this line to the midpoint of that one, and I'm not really sure that's where it is at, but we'll find out here in a few minutes. Alright, I'm going to dimension this distance from here to here as 10, and I want it to be the same distance over here, but rather than dimension that twice, I'm going to put a construction line in here, and so I'm going to put a construction line from here perpendicular to this line. I'm going to do the same thing down here, so I'll do a construction line down here. You know, we could just dimension that twice, and maybe that would be the easier way to do it. Be careful, I don't want to get to the midpoint of this line, so I'll change that to construction, and I'll change this to construction, and then I'll make these two equal. So I'll make this construction line equal to that construction line, so I know that distance between there is the same, so if I change this one, it'll change both of those. I will then draw a circle in here, or let's do a 3-point arc, and I'm going to draw that arc something like this. And let me drag this back here a little bit, and I will dimension the radius of this arc as 32, and I'll dimension the distance from here to here as 8. Notice that this geometry turns black, indicating that it is fully constrained. I'll then put a fillet in this corner, radius 6, and I'm going to put a fillet down here, radius 6. So I'll do a fillet, radius 6, and I'll select this corner, and I'll select this corner. Alright, then I'm going to put a circle at this point, and I'll put it up to either this line or to this line. I can drag this point back till it snaps there, and if I have trouble getting it to snap there, I'll just do trim and trim off the excess, and I'm going to trim off the excess here anyway. And actually, you know, I want to leave that in there, so let me undo that, and we'll see why in a few minutes why I want to leave that geometry in here. But I'm going to trim it off here, and I will trim it off up here, and there's a piece left right here. I'll get rid of that. Actually, alright, now this distance from here to here is 10, so I'm going to dimension that distance from here to here as 10. Notice that it all turns black. It's all fully constrained. Now, one thing that I wasn't sure about is whether this line should go to the midpoint of this line or should it go through the center of this arc? Let's put a line in here just to see where that's at. So I'm going to put a line, and I'm going to, so I see that it's actually doesn't go through the center if I put a line there, so it's questionable there about what the design intent was for this. And looking at the drawing, it looks like that the distance from here to here is a little bit greater than from here to here. So I'm going to take that line out, and I'll end up putting it in again. And actually I have this one to the midpoint, so let me undo that. I'll put a line in here from somewhere on this line over to the center of this arc. Alright, then I'm going to delete this line. I'll make this perpendicular to that. I'll make this line perpendicular to that, and then I'll also make this coincident to the center of this arc. Know that it all turns black again, and so I have it fully defined. I've got this side of my sketch completed, and again I'm just looking at this as on the drawing. It looks like this distance from here to here is a little bit longer than this distance from here to here. That's why I didn't use the midpoint and instead used the line going through the center of this arc. I will then come over to this side, and I'm going to, looking at section AA on the drawing, I'm going to draw a line from the origin up about like that, and I'm going to draw another line over here somewhere, and I want it to be parallel to this line, and I don't want it to snap to that to this intersection right here. So I'm going to actually come up here, and I'll make it parallel here in a few minutes. Okay, so I've got those two lines in. So we have to be careful that we don't accidentally snap to geometry that we don't intend to snap to. And now I'll do parallel. This line is parallel to that line, and move those together. So I'm going to move this one up about like that, and I'll go ahead and put the dimension in. So it's 5 millimeters from this line to this line, and then I want to draw a line in the on the original drawing. It's a little bit ambiguous about where this will be until I look at the 3D model. I want this point right here to be coincident with this line, and actually that didn't work, so I need to put in an angle dimension first. And so I'm going to put another construction line in here from here over to here, and let me change that to construction, and then I'm going to dimension the angle from here over to here, and that should be 120. Alright, now when I do that though, I see that this line has changed black, so I was trying to place that in the wrong place. I'll change that to construction, and let's move things around a little bit here, and so now I need a line going from here down, and I actually trimmed that line earlier, and I guess I could have just left that in. I'll do a line in from here up to here. Alright, so I've finished my sketch 1, so I'll say finish sketch, and then I will go turn off the dimension visibility. So let's to make this easier to see what we're doing, and then I'll start on sketch 2. So I'll go to the top plane, and I'll do a new sketch, and I'm going to draw a center point slot from the origin over about like this, and then I will dimension the distance from here to here as 50, and I want to dimension from the quadrant to the quadrant. Now if you move them, if you get the arc or the dimension tool in just the right place. So if I select that quadrant and I move around here and I'm trying to get this dimension tool to show up a special there, right there, and actually it doesn't want me to dimension that, so I'm going to do it in a different way. So let me undo whatever I just did. It'll be easier if I turn off the visibility of the first sketch. And I think maybe I'll just extend this out, so that'll make that a little easier. So I'll extend this out, I'll extend that out, and then I'll dimension this overall distance, a distance of 72. Now when I did that, I lost the center point of this line because I extended that line, so I'll do coincident the midpoint of this line back to the origin. It all turns black. It's all fully defined. I'll then offset this circle, and I'll come out and the actual when I do that offset, I'll dimension this distance from here to here as 16. And I need to double check everything and make sure that that is the true design intent. And I'm going to offset this circle again, but I'm going to offset it 8 this time. So I'll do offset, and I'll select this circle. I'm going to offset it a distance of 8, and I didn't put in a dimension, so let's go ahead and put that in. And so now that distance is 8. I'll finish this sketch, and then I will turn off the dimension visibility to clear up the clutter. I'll go back and make sketch number 1 visible, and let's drag the end of part marker up so that just sketch number 1 is visible. And I notice there's no thumbtack on sketch number 1, so I have some unconstrained geometry. It looks like it's right there, so I'm going to edit that sketch. Now if I can't find it, if I come down here and click on this degrees of freedom, I see that I have a degree of freedom there, and I also have a degree of freedom there, and that was a leftover point that I had from earlier, so I'll just delete that point. And then for this one, if I do this to the midpoint of this line, that'll get rid of that extraneous degree of freedom. So I'll do coincident. So I always want to fully define my sketches so that everything is black, and so that I have a push pin here or thumbtack showing that it's fully constrained. I will then do an extrude, and I'm going to extrude this area, and it really doesn't matter if I extrude that area just yet, so I'm not going to extrude that. I want to go a distance of 60 millimeters mid-plane. I'll make that sketch visible again, so I'll turn on the visibility of the sketch, and I'm going to do extrude again, and this time I'm going to select this area in here, and I want to do cut, and I want to cut mid-plane a distance of 32. Alright, then I'm going to come over to this end, and I'll do extrude, and I want to extrude all of that minus the hole, so let me cancel that and do that again. So I'll do extrude, and I want to get this area and this area, and I'm going to extrude that mid-plane a distance of 136. Okay, then I will do extrude again, and this time I want this area in here, and I'm going to do that mid-plane cut a distance of 100. Alright, now I'll turn off the visibility of sketch number 1, and I'll turn on the visibility of sketch number 2. Now for sketch number 2, I'm going to extrude this area and this area, and I'm going to go to this face, and I'm going to join that. Okay. I'll make that sketch visible again, and I'm going to extrude this area, I'll flip the direction. I'll go down a distance of 5, and then I'll do one more extrude. I'll select this area, and I want to go mid-plane through all, and I want to do cut to cut my hole through the part. So there is our completed 3D model for the design.